Good morning, everybody. John Delarose here, the leading Hispanic voice in science fiction. I'm not using Periscope so much these days. We'll see if this actually links to my Twitter or anything like that for people to tune in. Some people are showing up. Hi, everybody. Good morning. How's it going? Good morning, everybody. What's going on? Am I allowed to steal? So is the simultaneous sip thing copyrighted by Scott Adams? Does that work? It's his thing, right? I love coffee also. So yeah, my book came out this morning and I'm very excited. Thank you everybody for coming and thank you for showing up. If you haven't met me before, I'm John Delarose. I am a Amazon bestseller, big Oakland A's fan, obviously. I'm gonna be rooting for them today. It's a crazy close race. I'm just gonna go over my steampunk series real quick, and I'm going to just kind of show a little bit on Amazon for you guys to check out. If you haven't found out yet, my first is for Steam and Country. This is the cover right here. So I started getting into steampunk several years ago. It was a cosplay sort of thing. I thought it was very fun at conventions. I ended up at some dance party, and all these people were dressed in this 1800s garb, just like this, and they looked awesome. So I was like, wow, this is cool. And so I decided to write a book of it, and I did so. So this is basically a coming-of-age story. It's about a young farm girl who inherits an airship from her father. He's an adventurer. It's basically, people talk about that. People talk to me about realism about this sometimes, and I'm like, well, one, steampunk is not a realism genre. You're barking up the wrong tree here. But number two, if you have an issue with the realism of a girl being allowed to just take a weapon of war from a country or something like that and fly it out into a battle or whatnot, let's just reverse this a little bit, because that is literally the plot of Star Wars. So a farm boy, Luke Skywalker, goes out and then goes out and just Death Star runs, right? Think about that. So so I kind of took the original premise there I definitely did that on purpose, of Star Wars. I kind of did my own thing with it, and basically her father was this big adventurer who is named Baron von Monocle, and he's just larger than life type of guy. And so he has had his airship for 15, 20 years, and everywhere Zara goes, from day one, it's oh, your father's so amazing. He rescued us from flooding. He just sent commandos down on rope ladders from his airship and lifted us out of the floods. And then it goes on, and as it goes on, the legend just kind of gets bigger about her father and just everything he's done that's amazing. So she immediately feels very intimidated, very unable to live up to his mantle. And she's got this airship, and she's like, I can't do this. Thank you for the super heart there. All right. So, eventually she gets the airship. She causes problems with it, basically. The people on the airship don't trust her because she's just a young girl. And she basically gets told to, just kind of stand by and watch, and just let the adults do their thing. And of course, being a strong-headed woman that she is, and she's not going to sit for that. So this was met with very good reception. I've got 113 reviews. I'm not going to spoil it from there, but it's obviously airship adventure. I've only got one 2-star review. This came recently. She didn't like the naming conventions of the book, which I'll talk about in a minute. But everything else, people love this book. Very obvious. 4.6 out of 5 stars. New York Times bestsellers don't get this kind of love, and 113 reviews is really a lot here. So that's what we got right now. Right now, it just keeps selling. It's doing all right today. Yesterday it was selling a little more. Hopefully it'll sell a little more in a bit here. And this is what we got for book 1. So this was something that I spent a long time thinking about, and I've talked about this before. So you'll see it's called Baron von Monocle, and you'll think that's a ridiculous name. Hey, how's it going? And it is a ridiculous name. Yes, 100%. Baron von Monocle is a very ridiculous name. Zara von Monocle is a very ridiculous name. There's a doctor in the first book. There's Mr. Duke Gearsmith, Captain von Cravat, things like that. But this was my thought when I was paying attention to this and originally coming up with the concepts for this. Steampunk is, again, a ridiculous genre. It's got crazy technology that's kind of alternate. You're thinking about the wild, like that show, The Wild Wild West, right? I mean, you've got all these gadgets that definitely won't work in real life, but are very cool to look at and very cool aesthetically. So I thought about that, and I thought about like just typical fantasy naming, and it goes one or two ways, right? You typically have a like British aristocracy type of naming convention, or you have like Eowyn, Eldorin, Eldorado. It's like they have all those names that just like are very generic fantasy-y sounding in this day and age because they've just been used so many times. So I thought, you know what? I'm just going to roll with the steampunk thing, and I'm going to make a brand out of it. And so Baron von Monocle was born. So the convention is either the nobles in the land have a von or a du prefix to them that's bestowed upon them by the king, and the last name is associated with tradecraft of the past. So I do have a story kind of explaining this, which I haven't written yet. But what it comes down to, if you read through the book, there's a lot of customs involving the king, that he sort of dresses people down in his presence. He doesn't do it personally. The king is a very nice guy in this book. But the convention of tradition is that people in the king's presence get dressed down, and part of that is to just like make sure that the king is held as a power. Everybody else kind of looks ridiculous, so that it's harder to stage a peasant revolution or a noble revolution against the king when there's ridiculousness going on, because everybody's just going to laugh at it rather than do something about it. So I've never explained this before. So if you're on this Periscope, this is the first time I've explained this. But there's a scene in the book, basically, when people come into the king's presence for an audience, they dress people up with these like jester-like outfits that are just out of control and ridiculous looking. And that's part of that. So they do that to sort of like remind you of your place. Well, you have a ridiculous name like Von Monocle, that kind of reminds you of your place below the king also. It ties into that culture right there. So there is a big backstory to it, which I don't, I do a lot of world building. The white ruffles, you remember that. That's amazing. Thank you. I appreciate that. There's a lot of like world building that I have in the background of my stuff that don't make the page, because it's from Zara's perspective. So I do character first, right? So if Zara's sitting across from me telling me this story of what happened to her right here, she would only know like what directly. She's a farm girl. She doesn't have experience like in the capital. She's not a noble type herself, even though she's got the name. She is in a small farm village with like a small schoolhouse with like a handful of friends, a very limited experience, and so she sees the white ruffles, for the first time, and knows she has a ridiculous outfit in front of the king. But she doesn't know the history of where these naming conventions came from and all that sort of thing. So that's the in-universe explanation. The out-universe is that Von Monocle is a very memorable name, and I'm a branding guy on marketing, and so I have a nice in-universe explanation. I have a nice outside-universe explanation, and I like to have a good brand that's memorable. So that's I think that happens. I get most people don't care. A lot of the haters that I get, immediately go to that as if I'm some sort of bad writer for that. But it's very intentional. It's got a lot of explanation to it, and I think it's rich, actually. All right, so that's book one. So Zara's got her airship. Zara gets things going, and then I took a little diversion. I actually wrote Night Training after book two. So I wrote book two, which just came out today, which we're talking about, after Night Training. But Night Training I decided to come out with first. It takes place in between book one and book two. Basically, what I got a lot of feedback from the audience of was that James, the main character here in Night Training, he's Zara's best friend, sort of love interest, and next door neighbor, right? So he is literally the boy next door. He's always wanted to become a knight, and he focuses on that. He has a rough time in book one. His parents I'll leave that alone. Rough time in book one. But I got a lot of feedback that he needed a little bit more development, and so I came up with Night Training right here. It's just a short, quick book, and this one I think, are we still at 100%? Yeah, we're still at 100% 5-star reviews of this. So obviously, so people are liking my new writing a lot better than my old writing. But this one I have got as a 99 cent for a couple reasons. So one, it's short, and it's just like meant to tide you over and kind of give James a little extra depth, because we can't get that from Zara's perspective at times since he's off screen. I also wanted sort of like a lead into the series. If you wanted to just check out my writing, and it's real cheap, this is it. And I also wanted to develop the Knights of the Crystal Spire. So the Knights of the Crystal Spire are like the steampunk special forces. So they're talked about a lot in book 1, and they do show up and play an important part. But again, they're just off screen, and there's not a lot of development about them. And I've got all this world building that just like doesn't show up in the book because it just doesn't have a part to play in the story. And so this gave me a chance to develop that also. Those were my first 2 books in this series. For Steam and Country did very well. It sold a ton. It got the CLFA Book of the Year award, so people really loved it. I've got an audio book of that one, so if you've got an audio thing, check that out on that level and support me and my awesome audio narrator. And then Night Training I came out with a month ago. It became my first #1 Amazon bestseller. It did so in this the steampunk genre here on Amazon, and just amazing reception on this so far. So today, I'm going to pull up some cool stuff because I keep talking about the world building that you guys haven't seen. Some of you guys have seen this because I posted it on my blog a little bit, and I posted it on my Patreon when I had one of those going. I might get one of those going again. I don't know. But right now I've got too much to do to make extra content for that. But I'm going to show you this. This has only been shown on my Patreon in a couple spots to my knowledge. This is a map of Rislandia and the Wyranth Empire. So if you pay attention in the book, there's a few locations for the book. We've got Plains Road Village. This is where Zara's from. This is where farm is over here, where we start at. And she goes down to Loveridge at the beginning, where the airship is parked. And that's where she finds the airship. It's in the middle of a forest, as described in the book. So here's a little context of where she goes. The Border River's down here. So it's about the same distance to the Plains Road Village as Loveridge. Very, very quick trip by airship, very, very slow trip by horseless carriage or whatnot. And then up here is Rislandia City, right there, sorry. You see we got a little crystal spire right there. And so she's about, a little closer to Loveridge than Rislandia City, if it was a straight shot. But that's kind of the distances as it is. And so this is by, it is about a day's travel by foot. So they don't go out very often, and there's a bunch of stuff that gets named in the series that doesn't show up so much in the story. I do chapter headings if you guys pay attention, and those chapter headings are called the Baron von Monocle's logs. And what I did in the first book was just kind of give a smattering of adventures, so we kind of got the feel of all these things that Baron von Monocle did. And I actually let me see if I can find, I actually made a timeline of that in addition to this map. But let's see if I can grab the timeline. The timeline's pretty cool. So I saw this, and so they're kind of non-connected to the book in a lot of ways. They were just kind of meant to give some extra flavor, provide some of that world building that I was mentioning that didn't quite make the story because it was from Zara's perspective. But I wanted to give a little flavor for that. So you notice, like, one of the early ones, I talk about Portsgate and how he rescued some people from Portsgate. So there's Portsgate. There's a few other locations which are mentioned here. I mentioned the Oler Mountains and the Atrebla Kingdom, and those are back in here. We've got, let's see, what else is mentioned in the first book? I don't think anything else is actually mentioned in the first book. So, but this is our map of our world. It's like a peninsula type of thing. And let's see, Adventures of Baron von Monocle for Steam and Country. Let's look at my setting notes, timeline. So I developed a timeline. Let's see, here's my timeline. So all this stuff actually happened in the book. I should post this somewhere probably. I really want to make a Wikipedia for this because I've got such a intense world on this. that I've got. I need somebody's help if anybody's like a web person or wants to, or like is really into this world and wants to like help populate some of this. Contact me on that. So all this stuff happens like you know, in the book. So I mentioned this. These are part of the Baron von Monocle logs, and it starts in Malachy the 15th's reign, and you'll see it changes to the 16th reign after Malachy the 15th gets killed early in the books. So I've got this whole like sort of thing mapped out. I don't have it mapped out past you know, the beginning of the book for Steam and Country, but that's that. So a lot of new stuff and develops in this and a couple other things. You know, the end of the book we go down to the Wyranth capital. I don't have the Wyranth Empire any really cities or anything labeled in there because it's enemy territory. We don't know what's going on there. I want to do a book here. I made an Isle du Mystère, yeah, and I want to do something there later, but I haven't got to it yet. And that's that. So book two does something different. So this is what we got coming out today. It's the Blood of Giants. I should pull that up now. So yeah, you see I have all this background stuff. I've written a couple short stories involved in that, and a couple of them have been released. I think one of them has not been released. I think I'm going to send out one of them to my mailing list maybe later this week or next week, just so you get some of that. It's an old Baron von Monocle adventure. But I decided, like, I mean, it would have been very easy to just go straight into, like, the heavy war in Xera's sort of deal here. I wanted an adventure book, like a really pulpy, awesome adventure book, like with a ton of action. And so I created the Blood of Giants second. And basically, the plot of the first book, you'll find out that Xera has basically they find that the Wyranth soldiers like have some like super soldier serum, because super soldier serums are awesome, and they get addicted to it basically. And when there's an issue with that where these, without trying to spoil too much, they go through withdrawals. So Xera's trying to find a cure, and of course, where do you find a cure? You do it on a foreign continent and all that. You know, it's like going down to the Amazon and finding like some obscure like antibiotic or something, right? So that was my premise of that, my thought on the Blood of Giants. So Xera just basically takes off on her airship. This is her first adventure really commanding her airship. This is where she comes into her own. In the first book, she was very timid, very afraid to actually make her own decisions because she's a 16-year-old girl. And now she's had some experience with fighting. She's seen death firsthand. You know, she's a little more worldly as it becomes, and so we go out into the world with her. And that's what this is about. So I've got some like really cool civilizations in this, really cool different worlds and sort of settings in this, really cool tech and monsters and things like that, because I really wanted to just like push the pulp fun quotient to 11, and I think I accomplished that here. So it's book one, like we really spend a lot of the first few chapters just setting up who Xera is, and just say, you know, it's definitely her speed at that point in her life. And so the pacing's a lot slower at the beginning of the first book. And, you know, some people like that, some people don't, but it needed to be done just because of who she was at the time. I care about character first. So at this point, it's an extremely fast-paced adventure, and it barely gives you any time to breathe. The Blood of Giants is just like, if you can put it down, like I'll be surprised. So I'm dead serious. It's that fast-paced. So what I put into the book here is another map to give you a little context. I just sent you, so I just showed you the map of Verslandia and the Wyranth Empire right here, which is right here. But here's the world map. So our little corner of this universe that Xera knows about is only this tiny little spot right here. This is like the ultimate civilized world for as far as Xera is concerned, and we've got this giant world to explore. So we developed this map. This is Zenway, where she's at now. This is where she goes for book 2, The Blood of Giants. This is where she's exploring, trying to find a cure for the withdrawals for the Wyranth Super Soldier Serum. And say that 5 times fast. And this is where the cool adventures of book 2 take place. So I've got the timeline. So book 2's... So that's all my cool stuff I got for you. Book 2's Baron von Monocle logs take a little bit of a different path. So the first book, I just kind of used it to paint a broad picture of the world so that people saw the past, saw who the adventurer was, saw who all this, what was going on, and kind of got the world building context that wasn't there in the story from Zara's perspective. This one, because it's a little, Zara's a little more experienced and kind of knows a little more what's going on and sees what's going on. The Von Monocle's logs in book 2 actually tell a full story, and there's a story in the background that actually is kind of backstory that explains something in the book. I don't know, you'll pick up on it when you see it. So it's actually a little more important to the story itself than the first one was. So you'll want to pay attention to that. I think it basically acts as a short story for Baron von Monocle, the Elder, in that. So we've got this. It's out today. Do you guys have any questions about the book? I've got this. Book 1 for Steam and Country. Then we had Night Training. Then book 2. Book 3 is going to be out in a month or so. I've already got it done. I already got it ready. I haven't talked about that yet because I want to give this a little room to breathe. But I wanted to get out a couple sequels quick for you. And also because this one ends in a cliffhanger, guys. So I figured I should get that out quick for you so you don't have to wait on that. That's what I've got for the universe right now. We're gonna, the audiobook's not available for book 2 yet. She's working on it. It's gonna be, it's gonna be a few months because she's an amateur and does this in between gigs. So it's it's something where she's just helping out. So let's see. Yeah, book 3 will be out September 15th. No, maybe not 15th, but somewhere around there. After that, you'll see in book 3 something with James. He kind of veers off into his own plot. So he'll be coming out with a second novella maybe early next year, which follows up on Night Training. And book 4 will be sometime next year because I have to write the 2 alt hero books. I've got a trilogy, space opera trilogy that I'm in the works on. I've got a few other projects that I just wanted to take a break from this because I wrote so much content for this real quick that I needed to do something just a little bit different. And then book 4 I'll probably work on sometime late this year, maybe early next year. And it might actually, I'm thinking about doing a dual perspective of it where it's both Zara and James going back and forth because of the plot and because I think people would like that. So that's where the universe is heading. We've got a lot more to come. I've got plans for book 4 is already plotted pretty much. Book 5, I've got an idea for. I kind of want to veer off in a different direction just as a standalone sort of thing. And then I've got a book like 6 and 7, maybe just 6. I don't know. It depends on how that goes. So I've got those planned, and I've got James also plotted out into a trilogy of novellas. So hopefully we'll have 6 novels, 3 novellas, maybe some short stories and a short story collection to kind of fill out the world a little more. And that's going to be the plan for now. So very excited about this. Please check out The Blood of Giants. It's out today. And people, the people who've read it already are saying this is my best book. I think this is my best book. This is the first, thank you very much. This is the first book that I don't feel nervous about releasing. Like I've always had is this even good? Are people going to like it? I'm not worried about that here at all. I really am so excited to get this into your hands. Thank you so much. And thanks, Felsbug. Appreciate that. And yeah, we're getting the audiobooks done as fast as we can. And go A's, and hopefully we can lock up the. I never thought the A's were going to be able to lock up the division, but it's getting close for that. And I'm sorry that you're a Rangers fan. I'm sorry for your loss. So yeah, cool. Thanks for everybody for tuning in. I hope that was informative. That's kind of the background of my world. Showed you some cool exclusive stuff. And hope you enjoyed the book. Ping me on Twitter, Facebook, whatever. Let me know what you think about it. I'm excited, and I'll talk to you soon.